Hi there, welcome to the podcast. My name is Robin, and today we are going to be diving in on the topic of intersectionality and its role in the lives of queer Black women and the influence it has on music. These three identities have been historically marginalized, and yet have always been an immense impact on the music that we listen to every day. For example purposes, we're going to specifically be talking about hip-hop throughout the podcast. Before I get too far ahead of myself, it's important that we discuss what intersectionality is, and the importance of understanding the difference that identities make both historically and currently on music. Intersectionality is a relatively new term that was coined by a civil rights activist and scholar named Kimberly Williams Crenshaw in 1989. According to Syracuse University, it is a term that recognizes, quote, various biological, social, and cultural categories, unquote, that interact simultaneously when it comes to degrees of discrimination. When applied to music, this intersectional perspective takes a very interesting turn. To give this combination of music and intersectionality some context, I feel it is important to tell you where I got the idea from. I'm a student at Metropolitan State University of Denver, and a few months ago I attended the Black Women in and of Hip-Hop concert during the Umoja Conference. The first artist to walk on stage was Spinks, who is a Black queer female artist and honestly, officially, my first true introduction to hip-hop. Growing up, I was never exposed to this genre of music, and here I think it is important to check my privilege. I am white and lived in a well-off, mostly white area up until about a month ago. There I was never exposed to a wide variety of music despite my access to the internet. I was never taught about the different styles of music until college. Mostly like listening to Christian bands and that sort of thing. But hearing Spinks' music, I was able to connect and finally understand the artistry and poetic nature of hip-hop. I reached out to Spinks and was able to get an interview with her, and without further ado, I'll let Spinks introduce herself.
My name is Spinks. You guys can find me at Spinks Music on my Instagram. That's my main page where I really post my drops and upcoming things and shows and stuff like that. I've been doing music for probably about, I think it's 3 years. It just hit 3 years this November.
Wow.
I've been singing since I was like 5, and I just started writing and recording and dropping my own music for 3 years now. It's been a super dope experience so far. I'm super glad that I can actually pursue something that I've always wanted to. And it had a rough start in the beginning, but I feel like everybody around me started to support more and stuff like that. At first it was like, oh, you know, that's like an impossible career that you're diving into and stuff like that. But I now realize, like, I just always stuck with, like, no, I'm gonna make it. There's got to be a way. I'm gonna make it. Any way that I can make it, I'm gonna do so.
How would you describe, like, your identity?
I would say I think that a lot of my identity in what I'm trying to pursue and, like, my style of music and stuff like that is really trying to stay true to my roots, if that makes sense. So stay true. Like, I'm really trying to stay true to that. Obviously, you know how, like, there's different types of lesbians, correct? So I identify as a stud, but if you look at every other person, it's kind of hard that, you know, Kehlani started as a stud, like, in America's Got Talent and stuff like that. She's definitely one of my idols, of course, but now she turned into, like, you know, like a femme and a STEM or whatever she identifies as, right? And or them identifies as. It's really, I really try to stay true to, you know, I really love singing, I really love R&B, so I really want to, I'm pushing identifying as a stud, right? I feel like the industry can also try to pull left and right, like, any way possible that's going to market you best, right? And I feel like that's what artists had to do in order to be successful in what they want to do, is, like, identifying as what the label wants them to identify as rather than just staying true to themselves. If that's true, I'm not too 100%, but that's my intake on other artists in the industry and stuff like that. I'm really trying to stay how I identify as, how I love to dress, and what I love to make music about.
Thank you so much, Spinks, for being a part of this podcast and sharing a little bit more about your identity, because who you are is extremely important to how you put yourself out there in the world. I really don't think I could have said it any better than Spinks, to be quite honest. Being authentic and true to yourself allows you to connect to your music and makes it more powerful to those around you. It allows the audience to learn about the experiences of others while also giving you the opportunity to learn things about yourself, both as a person and a musician. Through listening to Spinks perform, listening to her music afterwards, and talking to her, I was able to gain valuable understanding of both of us and our unique backgrounds. I was surprised to learn about Spinks' take on identity. She looks at herself as a whole instead of separate parts that make a whole. Of course, that surprise could just be my own way of thinking of myself and my identity, but I found it to be very insightful, and it excellently displays the idea of intersectionality. It showed me that music makes identities easier to understand rather than divides them, which was my original thought about identities in music. From my experiences with Spinks and her music, I have found that music is an extremely emotional medium, and it can connect you to parts of yourself that you couldn't reach otherwise. I feel like this idea is especially true about hip-hop because of the history and culture around it, as well as the people who perform it. Would you say that, like, part of that, like, diving into other things is to, like, reach a wider audience of people?
Oh, most definitely. I'm trying to see, everybody likes EDM and stuff like that now, and I wouldn't be opposed to trying something like that, just to hear in the clubs, like remixes and stuff like that. And I don't know, I'm just really trying to hit everybody and just see I'm really trying to obviously stay true to myself, but like put my little spin on things and how I would rather, like, sing that or, rap on that or whatever the case is. Like, I'm trying to hit like other people and see, gain a new fan that, I don't know if I like R&B, but this EDM song, but like maybe I should like start listening, or just making an impact on people is really what I'm trying to do. Like, have a lot of people relate, and that's what I believe my purpose is just how people relate and have like a safe space for people to listen and feel whole, I guess.
That's super cool. Yeah, so kind of trying to make people that listen to you kind of like do what you're doing right now and like exposing themselves to different kinds of music.
Yes, definitely.
That's super cool.
Well, people relate and feel like how music makes me feel. I'm like, dang, like how did they do that? Or like, that's super cool how they said that, and I can relate to that. Like, I really can. Like, this is my favorite song right now. It makes me feel, whatever your favorite song makes you feel, that's what I want to help other people feel with my music.
All right. So now we're going to jump into a little bit of the history of hip-hop, the origins. This is an extremely important part of the podcast because you kind of have to have a little bit of context to really understand the impact that identities have on music. So the origin of hip-hop can be attributed to many different cultures in the United States history. According to Daphne Duval Harrison's chapter in the book Issues in African American Music, Power, Race, Gender, Representation, a culture that is prominently displayed within today's music is music that traveled through the African diaspora, which diaspora is a distribution of culture across the world. In this case, with the African diaspora, this is commonly due to the slave trade. In the United States, music as a result of the African diaspora formed a little bit differently, since the use of drums was banned. This ban was because the drums gave slaves a way to communicate, as well as connect to each other and their culture. Despite this, the emphasis on rhythmic diversity more specifically polyrhythms, continued to be a part of the music that developed in the US, which gave rise to genres such as blues and jazz. Also, according to Harrison, blues was a medium for Black people to express their hardships in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Harrison more specifically talks about Black women and their use of blues to find success, acceptance, and community. It became increasingly common to see female blues singers between around 1900 and 1940 and beyond, since it was a main path out of poverty for many young women. These women had to be extremely talented, motivated, and they had to look the part in order to make a career out of singing blues. Ma Rainey was one of these women, and she performed lavishly by the time she was 14 in 1910. She certainly looked the part and was very talented to uphold her career for a number of decades, even performing through the decline of the popularity of vaudeville performers in the 1930s. In addition to being a Black woman in the early 1900s, Ma Rainey, according to Cameron Phillips of Autostraddle.com, was also an impactful queer icon. She would regularly hold queer parties that were broken up by the police. She would dress in three-piece suits and would hit on women during her shows, with the police watching. And she would insert queer references into her songs. One of her songs actually reads, quote, "They said I'd do it. Ain't nobody caught me. Sure got to prove it on me. Went out last Saturday night with a crowd of my friends. They must have been women, 'cause I don't like no men. It's true I wear a collar and a tie. Talk to the gals just like any old man." End quote. Ma Rainey was anything but subtle about any part of her identity, and was a beacon of hope to many people in the marginalized communities she was a part of. All this history of blues and the impact of artists like Ma Rainey paved the way for the development of hip-hop and similar genres today. It really goes to show the power of such intersectional identities and how the use of music is a perfect catalyst for change and unity. There was and continues to be such a need for representation of queer, female, and Black movements in music, as well as an understanding of their representation throughout history, of which is a topic that I covered in my interview with Spinks. Are you aware of how history has impacted your music?
I think my dad has been a really huge, monumental person in my life and what I listen to and what I grew up listening to. Like, to this day, he still sends me, like, YouTube videos of Etta James singing a cappella and stuff like that, and just jazz and what really music originated in. As soon as they accepted the fact that this is music, this is what I'm going to be doing, my dad was like, all right, bet. And then he sent me, like, did you listen to that? I'm like, oh, I didn't. Or he's like, you better listen to that, because that's going to, he's trying to help me learn my roots more and stuff like that. He really definitely sends me jazz and sends me who originated, who Roxanne is. She was the one who started female rap and stuff like that. And he's definitely been a huge monumental person in what I listen to, and the history. I really learned the history through him, I would say. Like, he's the reason why I love Sam Cooke and super old people that you may not have heard of just because of him. I remember going into the garage, he always bumped so super, super loud, and I'm like, what is he always loud? When I was younger, I was like, what is he listening to? And then, they'd say the same thing with me, like with singing and stuff like that. They're like, you've been singing for hours. And I was like, yeah, like, it's just the same concept. And I really thank him. Like, he really helped me understand, like, how hip hop originated.
I think what Spinks' dad did for her growing up, and what he continues to do now by exposing her to different types of culture and music, and educating Spinks on her own backgrounds and the music that she performs, like the background of her music, it's just amazing, because exposure to new thoughts and ideas is extremely valuable, and it's what Spinks continues to accomplish throughout all of her music. By learning new styles of music, Spinks can reach a wider audience to spread her message of being yourself and acceptance more readily. I know that I have already learned so much from her music, and I find it extremely valuable. As stated by Spinks, this is also to expose her audience to new types of music so that they are able to better understand different types of people and to expand their minds. She told me that she was very interested in hearing about the history of blues played by women of color in the 1930s that we previously discussed, because it could inspire her to try new kinds of music or inspire new lyrics for her future songs, which I hope it does, because it's a story that isn't told as often as it should be. Looking back at history to see how we got to where we are now is vital to moving forward and changing for the better. While conditions for many marginalized communities are better than they were in the early 1900s, they still aren't perfect. Music continues to be an effective catalyst for change and a medium in which people can build community today. Examples include, as we've been talking about, Spinks, who is a local artist, but on a more global scale, I think a really important artist to bring up is Beyoncé. Beyoncé is one of the most successful musicians of today and has been using her music and background to create positive change. She plays similar music to what Spinks does, like hip-hop, more like soul and R&B kind of thing. And there's no way I can talk about Beyoncé without talking about her album Lemonade. This album took the world by storm when it came out in 2016, according to and excuse me if I mispronounce these names, but Kenitra Brooks and Camila Martin's book Lemonade Reader, according to that book, the album inspired Black women everywhere to be strong and mighty. It was unlike anything any Black activist any Black activist had seen before. Even scholars across the globe that studied a variety of topics such as ethnomusicology took interest, especially since Beyoncé had enough influence to impact people across the African diaspora. Her identity is a major reason her music is so successful. As Spinks said before, being authentic is an incredibly important aspect to the impact and reach of someone's music. This is true for even big celebrities like Beyoncé and local artists like Spinks. Without them being themselves in their music, it wouldn't inspire change for the negative ways of thinking about marginalized communities on a local or a global level. And there's definitely a time and a place for both local artists and global, highly famous artists, because of the reach of who they're able to have in their audience, in their pool of listeners. Because local artists are incredibly valuable because they are able to see what is going on within specific communities and really relay what is going on in a specific area. Whereas someone who is a much bigger celebrity may not be able to connect to people as specifically, but more in like a general sort of way. So there's definitely such a huge importance to have both, and to have people really be true to themselves and know who they are and make an impact on the communities that listen. And this pretty much wraps up everything that we're talking about today. But if you do want to continue to educate yourself on Black artists, history, and more, I encourage you to check out the Lemonade syllabus, which is based off of Beyoncé's album Lemonade. This work gives you a myriad of people to explore and learn from, so I would highly recommend checking it out. You should be able to find it by just looking it up. But yeah, like it has so many like female Black artists that write essays or poems. And one of those people, quickly before I forget, don't forget to check out Spinks' music and endeavors on Spotify by searching Spinks, and on Instagram by looking up at SpinksMusic _. So, to continue on with my previous rant. Before heading out today, I would like to leave you with one of my favorite poems by Maya Angelou, named Phenomenal Woman. She was one of the people that was listed on the Lemonade syllabus that inspired me to read this poem again. But I'll leave you with this. Pretty women wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion model's size. But when I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say it's in the reach of my arms, in the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Phenomenal woman. That's me. I walk into a room just as cool as you please, and to a man, the fellows stand or fall down on their knees. Then they swarm around me, a hive of honeybees. I say there's a fire in my eye, and the flash in my teeth, the swing of my waist, and the joy in my feet. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Phenomenal woman. That's me. Men themselves have wondered what they see in me. They try so much, but they cannot touch my inner mystery. When I try to show them, they say they still can't see. I say it's in the arch of my back, the sun of my smile, the ride of my breast, the grace in my style. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Phenomenal woman, that's me. Now you understand just why my head's not bowed. I don't shout or jump about, or have to talk real loud. When you see me passin', it ought to make you proud. I say it's in the click of my heels, the bend of my hair, the palm of my hand, the need for my care. 'Cause I am a woman, phenomenally. Phenomenal woman, that's me.